Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy.
Alright, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously welcome back to the show. Today's episode 271 of the show. And before we get started, we're just going to do a house cleaning quick around here because it makes sense that we don't. So let's just get on with the house cleaning. I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It does mean a lot to me. You guys constantly take time of days to, download episodes, to share episodes, to constantly keep letting me know how you feel, whether you like my stupid face or not, or my opinions or not. At the end of the day, I greatly appreciate it. And I greatly appreciate all y'all for coming back and listening. Because again, I wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't actually listening to this stuff, because then I'd just be a crazy person talking to myself at this point. But for some reason, you guys still seem to be coming back. And well, like I said, it's already been almost like 5 years since doing this stuff. So the fact that you guys are still listening is either one, you guys must really enjoy the commentary, or two, I must just be crazy to keep doing this. But I greatly appreciate y'all. Also, I do appreciate a lot of the good feedback that we've been getting for the new logo. Again, if you guys aren't aware, if you check the Spotify page, YouTube page, whatever you're checking to listen to the show or watch the show, you probably have noticed that the logo has changed. So we do have a new logo for the show. We've been talking about this for the last couple of years, and the fact that now it is a possibility, and now that we have a new logo, again, I'm really excited for this, and I'm really excited that y'all enjoy the new logo because, again, it's a fresher feel, more upbeat. Yeah, like the original logo will always hold a place in my heart just because it's the original logo that we started the show with. But the fact that we have something new, it's beautiful, and I'm really grateful for, how we got it. But at the end of the day, I really appreciate y'all, and I really appreciate all the feedback. But on today's episode, because we got some stuff to talk about today, which based on the poll, you guys seem really excited about this one. And it's talking about this new emulator, which bear with me, an emulator that launched on iOS, and it's not on a jailbroken iPhone. Crazy shit, am I right? But it is true. Officially, the first emulator has launched on iOS, and this isn't like some clickbait. This isn't trolling. Like, this isn't some jailbroken side-loading stuff shenanigans. No, this is officially, you can go on the App Store, you can download it, and it is a big deal, especially when you look at the current landscape with emulation and seeing how emulators are being taken down. Nintendo struck down Yuzu. Even though, yes, I still fall under the belief that emulation is legal, that emulation is fair, that it is not an infringement of anybody's copyright or anything like that, but that it should be used in the means of game preservation. And I find it fascinating how, for the first time ever, Apple has allowed an emulator on the App Store. And yes, there was an emulator that came out previously before this one, but that one was taken down because it literally was a copycat of this one, that this was the original that was supposed to come out. And now it officially is available, and it's called the Delta emulator, that if you have an iPhone, iPad, MacBook, iMac, whatever it may be, anything Apple related, the fact that you can just go on the App Store right now and download this emulator is kind of wild, if we're being honest here, because let's be realistic here, guys. Not in a million years would we have thought it was possible that an emulator could show up on the App Store. And that's just being objective here. Like, no one could have ever imagined this happening. But now it is a reality. Now, yes, there is some limitations on what systems can be played on this emulator. It's not going to do GameCube. It's not going to do Wii. It's not going to do, Wii U, Nintendo Switch. Like, it's clearly not going to do any of those bigger systems, 360, PS2, PS1, but it is going to do like those GBAs, GBCs, NES, SNES, N64, those systems that are going to be a little bit easier. But the fact that it's all available on your iPhone now is insane. And this is something we've talked about a while back when we talked about handheld emulators, or even had those conversations about some of these devices, that if you notice some of the chips that they're using, I guess they're a little bit more underpowered chips, because let's be realistic, guys, these older systems weren't necessarily super powerful beasts. Like, yes, at the time they were incredibly powerful, but in today's landscape of things, especially when it comes to technology, as technology changes over time, yes, they're not necessarily super demanding systems. Like, they can be pretty much run on anything. But the fact that you are now able to leverage the power of an iPhone for these emulators is, well, impressive. And it does open the floodgates for potential possibilities of, say, GameCube, Wii U, and seeing the performance that we get on an iPhone and iPad emulating those games, because that's something we never had the option to be able to see, especially because everything had to be sideloaded, jailbroken products, whatever it may be. But the fact that now it is a reality that we could see this happening is impressive. And, you know, before we get started, or I'd say as we continue the conversation, we also should point this out as well, that yes, this could have been an easy cash grab, you know, first emulator on the iOS App Store. Like, yeah, it could suck doo-doo dog cheeks, but it turns out the emulator is actually really good, surprisingly. Yes, it has some hiccups here and there with audio that are like very minor, and I'm being very, very honest with this, that many people have probably shown this in demonstrations and things like that. Like, there are some audio jitters and things like that that can happen, but once, you know, those little bugs get ironed out, it does run very well. And yes, it's very surprising the fact that it's straightforward and simple to actually get your files on it. You just open the app, you obviously input your ROM files wherever you have them, whether it be on your iCloud, you know, you have them physically on your phone, downloaded, so you can just, you know, set it to go to this specific folder to pull ROMs from. The fact that it's very easy to edit the artwork for those games on there as well. And yes, it does ask for BIOS files and things like that, but let's be realistic, guys. Like, just being honest with you, you could definitely just download off the internet somewhere. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the point stands. The fact that the emulator is extremely easy to set up, and that it actually does deliver a good experience, and it does have controller support, so you can use a PlayStation controller, Xbox controller. If you have a Backbone controller, it works great with the Backbone. If you have the Galileo G8 controller, that, you know, I highly recommend that for anybody that's playing on their phone. If you like mobile gaming, highly recommend that controller. But at the end of the day, guys, this does have some interesting implications going forward. Because yes, this is the first and only emulation application on the App Store. But what about other emulators, like popular emulators like PSP, or say, for example, if someone were to, I don't know, put the Yuzu shit on there somehow? I don't doubt it, but you know what I mean, because some people have the APKs. Dolphin possibly making its way there, Aether making its way, another DS emulator, you know, different types of emulators, maybe different front ends and things like that. The fact that this is even happening, or these conversations are even able to be had, is a step in an interesting direction. And yes, you could say this is part of the EU, you know, meddling with Apple, you know, causing regulations and things like that. When I think about all this, I'm excited, because I've always said this. If you look at, say, high-end flagship Android phones like the S24 Ultra, you know, the OnePlus 12 or anything, even those modern Android phones that use like a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, Gen 3, you know, handhelds like the Ion Odin 2, if you're not familiar with that, it's a, you know, retro handheld that allows you to play a lot of games on the go. But yes, it is very powerful. It uses Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and it does Switch emulation practically flawlessly, GameCube emulation, Wii emulation. The fact that now we have access to the iPhone, and the fact that we have access to the Abionic chips, which, yes, have objectively been true that they do perform better than the Snapdragon counterparts. Like, yes, they also are limited based off the cooling that Apple is using for their iPhones, because let's be real, I don't believe Apple is using a, how would you say, incredible cooling solution for their phones. That it definitely can be improved, and there's nothing wrong with that. That just means, hey, there are some room for improvement there to keep these chips cooler. Because yes, it is shown that these Abionic chips do perform better than their Snapdragon counterparts, that they do deliver better performance, so that extra headroom for games would be beneficial. Now, I will say this though, if I were to ever see, say, Dolphin running on an iPhone, you bet your sweet ass I'm going to be having some fun, and I'm probably never going to touch a Retroid handheld ever again because I'm just going to use my iPhone to play, well, my GameCube and my Wii games. Let's be realistic here. I kind of like playing Sonic Colors right now on my PC. Not going to lie to you, homie. But the point stands is this also opens the floodgate to emulation to a larger audience because, yes, it is true that in the US, on the App Store, there are over 100 million people visiting the App Store every day, and over 200 plus million people that own iPhones in America. So the fact that this app, specifically the Delta application, now has access to all those user base is wild. And the fact that now more people are able to get into emulation because now they have access to it on their device, because let's be realistic here, for a lot of people that wasn't necessarily appealing that you have to get some Android phone or even some Retroid handheld to enjoy emulation, or even just buy a PC. Most people, hey, if they want to stay in the Apple ecosystem, that's fair. That's their prerogative. That's the choice that they are choosing to make because they prefer to be in this ecosystem. I will say this though, now that they have options and now that it is possible, this does open the floodgates for potential other emulators to show up. And this is what people are excited for. They're excited to see what is next. What is the next step from here as we proceed to go forward? And to be honest, I'm interested. Like, I already have the emulator downloaded. I'm literally getting it set up to start using all my ROMs that I already have on my Google Drive, transfer them over. Heck, might even put some on my iCloud, just have them there ready to go, because why not? And have a blast, because for me, like, yes, I do always carry my iPhone on me. Like, I have two phones. That's just being transparent. I have my Z Fold 5 and I have my 15 Pro Max, but my 15 Pro Max is what's always on me. And my Z Fold 5, I use it when I'm doing my gigs and stuff like that because it has a separate phone number. But I also can't really use my Z Fold 5 for emulation so much because it is a folding phone and it's kind of cumbersome that I can't really use it with a controller. But the fact that I can use my iPhone now and still play some of those games on the go, like whether it be my, GBA games, Game Boy Color games, whether it be my DS games, if I want to play my DS games on the go, and have access to more powerful hardware, to me, that is a win. And that makes it more enjoyable. The fact that I don't have to buy an iOS 2, because now I can just use my iPhone now. I don't have to go buy a dedicated device. Now, yes, those dedicated devices still have a place in the marketplace. Let's be honest here, guys, because some people don't want to have to put their phone into a controller or, deal with all that stuff. But the fact that you have the option that you can just use your phone now, very powerful. Even older iPhones too. The fact that you could just get an older iPhone and use it for that stuff. You know what I mean, guys? Like, we are in an interesting time and place that never in a million years could we have imagined this. Now, I will also say this, though. If you're in the EU, you're also kind of getting shafted by this, too, because of the fact that of the implementation that Apple is using for the new regulations for sideloading and things like that, that, yes, they do have to pay 50 cents. I think the developer has to pay 50 cents in the EU per download after a certain threshold. So as a result, they launched a app store that you can buy for $1.50 a year that allows you to get access to that app for free, which in hindsight, I could see the value from it because, again, it's well, I put it like this. For $1.50 a year or $1 or 1.5 euros, I don't see that as a bad thing. I understand that it's just to help offset the cost, so it's not that bad. But I do understand that it's kind of crummy for the people in the EU because here in the US, we can literally just go into the App Store, download it, and no issues. But the fact that now, like I said, here in the US, it is now possible to use emulation on your iPhone, and this only opens the floodgates for other emulators to come by, because other emulators, let's be realistic, guys, they are seeing this. They have seen the process that the Delta emulator went through to get approved, and they've seen that Apple has deemed this fair use, that this is fair game, that they say that this is a safe app to download for their users. So it's only a matter of time before we see things like Dolphin, before we see things like Aether, before we see things like PSPS, like before we see these other emulators start to populate. And at that point, the floodgates are open, and then we're just going to be balling like the Lakers. Let's be real here. Even though, yes, I know they're out of the playoffs, but who cares? I don't care about the Lakers. It's just a phrase. You know what I mean? But the point stands, guys. This is an interesting time for iOS. This is an interesting time for consumers. The fact that now we have options that, especially for emulation, you can now play some of your favorite games, whether it be on Android and now iOS. Yes, there are still limitations because iOS doesn't have access to, say, GameCube, Wii U, PSP, PS2, PS1, Xbox. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have access to these things. But the fact that the floodgates are now open, it is only a matter of time before we see this stuff. And this should be something that we continue to have these conversations over time, because, again, that is how Well, that's how things should be done. We should be having these conversations over time and not just leaving them as one-off conversations. But let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you guys interested in the Delta emulator? Are you guys going to be downloading this emulator and trying it out? Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Or are you guys even a fan of emulation to begin with? Do you even care about playing older games? Like, let me know in the comments down below. But I hope you guys loved today's episode. I really appreciate y'all. I hope you guys have yourselves a wonderful day and a wonderful week. Please continue to be safe, guys. Don't do anything dumb. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.